Behnam, Taleblu is our guest in the studio this time. Good to see you.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Tell me, how do you see this signal from the U.S. to Iran?
Well, the recent changes to the U.S. force posture in the region are crucial additions to the chessboard that can already be used to deter Iran. But the Islamic Republic's increased risk tolerance means that it's not just about the capabilities that the U.S. is surging into the theater, it's about the U.S. resolve to use them. Recently, there was a successful instance by the Fifth Fleet in the Persian Gulf to deter an attempted Iranian harassment and hijacking attempt using actual live shots. Live ammunition was fired. It's an outsized question right now if this is going to be a sticky, newfound reputation for resolve, or if America is going to file back on tried and true showing capabilities but not actually using them.
So this is basically cat and mouse games in the Gulf. It's not going to spread, do you think?
Well, the Persian Gulf and Strait of Hormuz is one of several domains of escalation. It's a domain of escalation not just between America and Iran, and not just between America's Arab partners in the Persian Gulf, but also between Iran and Israel. We know, for instance, Iran has even tried to attack in the past tankers that it believes was Israeli-owned. It's tried to disrupt Israeli shipping. So the maritime domain more broadly is one area to watch and understand and make sense of Iran's risk tolerance, its emboldenment, and things like that.
Well, supposedly the U.S. and Iran are on somewhat better terms now. That's what we hear. Maybe it's some sort of an agreement and so on. So do we have a ceasefire or not a ceasefire?
Well, you know, the Islamic Republic is capable of walking and chewing gum, something I think that I wish that U.S. strategy would be a bit better about. It's able to extract concessions in one area or to try to feign an interest in diplomacy to get some kind of larger macroeconomic relief. And let's not make any mistake, when you're looking at oil exports from Iran, something that ends up funding terrorism, funding the nuclear program, the lax U.S. sanctions enforcement, whether it's part of any kind of ceasefire or interim agreement or unwritten political understanding, is actually self-defeating by America, because the record high numbers that we have now, 1.6, 1.5 million barrels per day, were not seen in the past 5 years. So if we have problems with what the Islamic Republic is doing in the region, in the maritime domain, we should be going after the sources of the funding that helps drive those things.
Let's talk a little bit about what's happening inside Iran. The morality police is back on the streets. What does it tell you?
Well, for me, there was a story a few months ago that talked about the potential removal of this force. I never believed that it had dubious sourcing to begin with. But make no mistake, the Islamic Republic sees the massive protests, and we're coming up on the one-year anniversary of that this September, and it'll coincide with the UNGA. So all eyes will be on the Western world, on America, on every country that has levied human rights sanctions against Iran, to see 1 year later, what have they done to marry their rhetoric with reality on standing up for the Iranian people. So that'll be a critical impasse. The second is, what has the Iranian state done, meaning the government of the Islamic Republic, as part of its larger continued repression of protests which are smaller scale but are still continuing. And the resurrection of this force, or the reintroduction of this new morality police, tells you one thing, that the government is not giving up on repression and hard power anytime soon.
Right, but the uprising did lose some steam.
Yeah, but when you see the uprising in a larger context, it's part of a newfound boom and bust cycle of protests that have pushed away from reform, and since late 2017, early 2018, have been part of a series of movements towards a whole nationwide revolution. And what's clear is that there will be another predicate, likely economic, likely social, that will allow the Iranian people of different geographic and demographic backgrounds to come onto the street again and to continue to contest the state from the street. The question is, where will the world be at that time? And will our sole obsession and will our sole focus be just the nuclear issue?
And the fact that the pressure is a little bit off on the nuclear issue right now, seems like it. Does that mean Iran will continue its program?
Unfortunately, yes. We know the Islamic Republic is capable of extracting concessions and then escalating its program, so the theory that only sanctions are what generates the escalation is not borne out by the facts on the ground. Under the 2.5 years of what you could call maximum deference of Joe Biden, in contrast to the maximum pressure of Donald Trump, Iran has significantly expanded its nuclear program, even earlier this year going to 83–84%. That's a stone's throw from weapons-grade uranium, which is 90%. But let's look look back in the history books, when the U.S. dropped one of its uranium bombs on Japan, it used uranium that was only enriched to 80%. So if we focus just on the future, or potential 90%, we'll be missing the forest through the trees of Iran's nuclear gains.
So what do you hear here in Israel?
Well, here in Israel, there is obviously great interest and attention on pushing back on Iran in the region. There's significant concern vis-a-vis Iran's continued material support for Hezbollah, and of course what Iran is doing with the Palestinian factions, in particular in the West Bank, trying to ignite more of a regional fire around Israel as part of a newfound boom and bust cycle of violence emanating from Gaza, or newfound stabbing attacks that we've seen from 2021 to the present. So there is concern here that Iran has built up a diplomatic victory against some of the Arabs in the region, and is now trying to translate that into a military victory around Israel. So there is not just concern with the nuclear program here, but a fast-moving regional situation that Washington seems totally divorced from and unable to impact.
Right, that not many expected. Behnam, I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you.